So we're going back on stage again. We're going to be live in the Cork Opera House on March 30th for a very special event, which is going to form part of the Cork Podcast Festival. Our show is called Look Who's Talking. It's going to be all about those criminals. How do we get them into studio? How do we get up close and personal with them? And what have they got to say when the cameras are off? So Cork Opera House, tickets from corkpodcastfestival.ie, 30th of March. See you there.
I feel like I blinked and I'm back.
Yeah. Well, there was people working hard while you were blinking away. You know?
Very quick.
Yeah.
I have to say, the one thing that did draw me back into everything was this story that we're going to talk about now. People have been arrested and now charged in relation to the torture of that man that was branded. Now, obviously, you and others sent that photograph through to my phone. What is seen can't be unseen.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. But absolutely shocking. A photograph of a guy who had clearly been tortured, blood, bruising. He'd been branded. I actually, from the photographs, didn't realise until I saw the court copy and what has been said in relation to this. And we're just going to stick to this for the moment because these people are before the district court, is it?
Yeah.
That they used a kind of a burning iron, like that you'd use on an animal, basically?
Well, that's the allegation, because these people have just had their initial appearance in court. They've been charged in connection with what was described as a planned and organised torture of a man in West Dublin. The hearing of the court heard evidence that police are alleging that the man had rat branded into him with a basically what they used to mark cattle, which was, the claim is that this was heated up and pushed into his body 9 times. It's also claimed he was waterboarded, beaten with a metal pole and an axe, on one occasion run over with a motorbike, and also threatened that he'd be raped with a stick. Now, 5 men have appeared before the court. This is a very early stage. The court heard there was 3 brothers accused of this: Jason Hennessy, Devin Hennessy and Brandon Hennessy, all from Sheephill Avenue in Corduff, and then a father and son, Dean Fitzsimons and Kenneth Fitzsimons from Dublin 15 as well.
So the evidence usually, I suppose, to say to people, usually when somebody's before the court, and we're restricted when somebody goes before the court to just talk about what has been put to the court. As the evidence comes out, we can report on that. And obviously, if a case is moved to the special criminal court, there's only 3 judges and not a jury. So, you have a little bit more elbow room. But the reason this evidence has come out so quickly in the court is to do with bail.
Yeah, so obviously people have an entitlement to apply for bail once you're charged. And the vast majority of people, even for relatively serious offences, will get bail. So the judge has to make a decision, and as part of that decision, the guards are able to give evidence, make submissions, and on this occasion, they objected to bail. They have a number of reasons why they will object to bail. The seriousness of the charge obviously is relevant. Obviously, for something like if there was somebody who's charged with murder, they automatically can't get bail except for if they go to the High Court. But they can still get bail when they get to the High Court. But on this occasion, the charges are causing serious harm and false imprisonment. And the guards objected to the bail given the seriousness of the charges and also what they described as the risk that witnesses might be interfered with. And it was a very long hearing actually on Sunday night. It went into a special sitting.
Yeah.
I think it ended at midnight, which is, very uncommon.
Very unusual.
Yeah.
Now, just to start with, I suppose that this investigation was ultimately launched earlier last week when a man in his 30s collapsed at a relative's home in Corduff.
Yeah.
He was presumably taken for medical attention.
He was taken for medical attention,
and the Gardaí were contacted.
Yeah.
So officers then went to a house, to the Hennessy family home on Sheephill Avenue.
Yeah.
And they sealed off a garden shed at the back of that house. And that is what the court was told investigators suspect is the location of this incident, this abduction and the interrogation and torture of this individual that they've alleged before the courts. Now, This man, the court was told, knew them.
Yeah, this man knew them. He had called into the home effectively. They had brought him to this property this site at the rear of the property, and at one point he'd been on a phone, and he said that it is claimed that the offences began at this point, that he had a phone in his hand he was snatched from him, and he was punched in the face by Jason Hennessy. And then it's alleged that the victim was told to tell the man the truth before Kenneth Fitzsimons grabbed a steel bar, 5-foot steel bar, and beat him across the legs 7 to 8 times, it is claimed. And then it is said that he was asked about giving information to certain people and lying to the people attacking him. And then it is claimed Brandon Hennessy, who'd be the younger brother of Jason Hennessy, the other accused, told the victim that he had given the alleged victim that he had given him false information, knowing he provided to others. So basically saying this information could have come from you. And he then grabbed the steel bar and beat the alleged victim all over his body. Then the detective sergeant in court gave evidence that Jason Hennessy took a cattle branding marker device with the word rat in it and said he'll talk after this. So people might have seen this in TV programs, a cattle brand where it's used in cowboy films to mark a cattle as ownership. And it's claimed
it was claimed this was heated over a sort of little gas stove.
Yeah,
a
camping stove. It was heated, and it was then this is customized. Obviously, it is claimed that they have this word rat, and that he claims that was put on him up to 9 times. And it's also claimed that Dean Fitzsimons arrived at the property and drove over the alleged victim's leg with a motorbike, and that also attacked him with a steel bar and also hit him over the back with an axe. And then there was further evidence about threats.
Was there any evidence around how this photograph was released?
Well, there's no evidence about the photograph.
Okay. So basically, these individuals have all been remanded in custody, and the case will continue.
The case will continue. There was other evidence given about alleged waterboarding, where it was said that a towel was put over the victim's face and water was poured over the tower. It's described as waterboarding in court, and the man felt he was drowning. He's also claimed that Dean Fitzsimons stood over him, told him to tell the truth or he'd leave in a body bag. And at that point, he was branded 6 times by Jason Hennessy.
He was also threatened somewhat, or the court was told, with his children, who he said that the individuals charged in relation to these offences, that they knew him a long time and they knew his children.
Yeah, that was also said. And there was also further claims that Brandon Hennessy had said to him, pull down his tracksuit and rape him with his stick, and that this threat didn't come to fruition, but that was said. And at that point, there was a disturbance in the court. And it's also claimed that Devin Hennessy then...
the disturbance in the court was... Dean Fitzsimons was shouting, or had made some remark, and ended up in shouting at the judge. And
he shouted, "Get up, son," at one point during it. And then things settled down. There was further evidence and further threats, it is claimed, were made. Brandon Hennessy said, "I know where your kids live." And Jason Hennessy allegedly told him, "We'll burn your dad's house down." Then the court heard his phone was taken from him, all messages were deleted, and he was told to leave the property.
Now, we can't give any opinion evidence on this for the moment, and as I say, it's going to continue going through the courts. Those charges are serious. Obviously, the evidence we've heard so far is very serious. It's unlikely this case will remain in the district court. It'll either move to an upper court, where the Central Criminal Court, or possibly there may be a suggestion down the road to move it to the Special Criminal Court.
Yeah, I mean, like you heard Barrister Oisin Clarke and Solicitor Sean Fleming, who represent the accused, said their clients were entitled to the presumption of innocence, and that the nature and seriousness of the alleged offence wasn't grounds for an automatic refusal of bail. That came after a guard had said he believed Jason Hennessy will continue to have a significant impact on the community of Corduff, and that the alleged offending sends out a message to the community and that actions against the group would not be tolerated. He also described the branding of the alleged victim as a rat, and releasing him sends a message to the local community. All that was heard by Judge Murphy, who said the planned nature of the alleged incident led her to have concerns about the interference with witnesses and refused bail, and they would be back later, I think later this week.
Yeah.
So that'll probably be a very brief hearing then to deal with legal aid, all of the normal issues. But you're talking a long-term case, I would say.
Now, in the meantime, a separate case in the Special Criminal Court relates to the murder of Jason Hennessy Snr, the father of the three of the accused. And Jason Hennessy Snr died from gunshot wounds he sustained on Christmas Eve 2023 in a restaurant in Blanchardstown in Dublin. 3 men were found guilty by the courts of the murder of Tristan Sherry, who was the gunman who came into that restaurant to shoot Jason Hennessy. Very chaotic scenes were relayed again. I saw through the the videos that people took who were in that restaurant that night. So 6 people remanded in custody for sentencing in April. Now, Justice Kieran Naidoo said that the Special Criminal Court was satisfied that Michael Androcott was guilty of the murder of Tristan Sherry.
Yeah.
He had kicked him several times, stabbed him with a butter knife, hit him with a chair, and intended to kill or cause serious harm. So the accused in this case, or now the convicted in this case, were dining out in that restaurant with Jason Hennessy when Tristan Sherry came in with a gun, walked straight over and fired it a number of times. He then became the subject of the attack by people who were with Jason Hennessy. They turned on him, and they've all been before the courts for some time. This whole situation has very violent and has caused huge amount of chaos in the Blanchardstown area. I noticed, by the way, in regard to the charges for the torture and abduction, 100 Gardaí were involved in raids on a number of properties for that.
Yeah.
Huge amount of resource.
So, yeah, look, these are complex cases coming before the courts, but, we'll have to let them play out, I suppose.
So Androcott, anyway, the court heard that he had walked away a number of times before coming back to kick Tristan Sherry again, and he'd taken photographs of his body on the ground with his mobile, and he took photographs of himself kicking him. David Amah.
Yeah, David Amah, he was actually only 17 at the time, so he was initially, when he was charged, he wasn't being able to be named. But by the time it comes to court, he is being named. He's 19 years old now. And it showed the CCTV, which, it was just within the restaurant, very normal to have CCTV there. It showed him again, repeatedly stamping and kicking Sherry's head and body before striking him with a chair. And it also found it was clear that Amah had again used a knife to stab Sherry. And according to the court, his decisions to arm himself effectively, have showed a total loss of control effectively and led to this conviction.
Noah Massini, who was also 17 at the time, he had told the court that he attacked him because he was afraid. He attacked Sherry because he was afraid of him. He said he remembered a gun being pointed at him and his first instinct was to run. He had told the guards. He said, I tried to get out the door, but the door wouldn't open. I remember coming out and I saw a body falling down and wanted to get to safety. I wish that door would open. But the court found he couldn't have seen the body falling as he was in the bathroom at the time. And the judges were satisfied that he kicked Tristan Sherry as he lay on the ground, repeatedly stabbed and stamped on his head, intending to kill or cause him serious injury. And he also threw a chair at him. It's the detail of this, it's sort of, you can see the scene in your head.
Yeah, it's visceral.
And it makes it even more poignant, the idea that we're somewhat used to talking about this sort of stuff and we're ready to talk about it. We've sat down for that very reason. If you're out in a restaurant with your family, having a Christmas Eve meal, kids with you, whatever, waiting on your burgers and chips, and this happens in front of you, I don't know how people would recover from that, to be honest with you. It's absolutely so unexpected. obviously happened so quickly,
Yeah.
dramatically. And it would have felt to me as if it wasn't going to end.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Because it must have gone on for quite a
yeah, I mean, though
period of
you're
time.
talking about these things happening within a couple of minutes, nonetheless, for a man to lose his life.
Mussolini's defence, of course, was he was a child, quote, in shock, a 17-year-old schoolboy expecting Christmas dinner when the people came in with the firearms. But while the judges sort of did accept he was in fear, and that they also found him, that he returned to the restaurant, that he was...
Yeah, see, the nub of the case, what it turns on is not the fact that Tristan Sherry was killed and killed violently. Like, that's accepted. The CCTV footage shows that none of the men said it wasn't them in the footage. So they're all accepted as being at the scene and playing a role.
Mm-hmm.
But the men had...
like many of them in their defences say they fled the violence when the gunshots started. They ran. Jonas Kabangu also said he ran into the kitchen of the restaurant when that shooting started. But he said he was in fear for his life and for his safety. He said he used no unnecessary violence. But the court found that when they returned, Tristan Sherry was lying on the ground, I suppose, defenceless. So and that's when they attacked him.
Yeah, because all of them attempted to rely on self-defense. So, I mean, if you're on the street and somebody attacks you violently, you're able to defend yourself. And under the law, if that defense results in somebody getting an injury, for example, that's okay. That's self-defense. But the distinction the court made was that when some of these men became involved, Sherry had been disarmed and lying on the restaurant floor. That he wasn't, the self-defense didn't follow through at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, if they had attacked him as he pointed a gun at him, it may have been a different scenario. But the fact is that he lay prone and unharmed or unarmed when he was stabbed effectively. So that self-defense didn't, and I probably actually misspoke in terms of the loss of self-control wasn't accepted either, because that could have been used to give a lesser verdict, I suppose.
The verdict is murder on these three.
Is murder,
and while the all six will be sentenced in April, like they are getting a life sentence because that's the only sentence available to the courts.
Yeah, that's the other. That's
so young,
and
and like such chaos, and for them, I suppose what was planned was to go out for dinner with their then boss, Jason Hennessy Snr. And it was the reaction to that, but the chaos that sort of drugs world, you live in that chaos and anything can happen at any moment in time.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the distinction the law makes, that while, there's choices made here.
There's choices made here, and that's the distinction. And we've seen self-defense be put forward in different cases, not to get into them specifically, but in recent times, and where that has been accepted by juries, that under the circumstances they were in, that the action that the person took was proportional and reasonable. But that wasn't accepted in the Special Criminal Court by the judges in this case. The CCTV, of course, leaves, the interpretation. Judges are interpreting what they see in front of them. So I think that's the basis on which they make those decisions, or at least in part make those decisions.
Now, we should probably just finish with the rest of the three that are before the courts, one of whom is before the courts on a separate issue, so we won't describe the evidence there. Yeah. But there's a Dermot O'Brien who said he ducked down under his table when the gunmen came into the restaurant. He was, the court found, obviously in fear, but again, he helped to move Jason Hennessy away over Tristan Sherry, and the court found he would not have done that if Sherry was still armed or thought to represent a threat. He says he did not use any unnecessary violence or force, but the court rejected that claim of self-defence, said his actions were inconsistent with him being in fear. He had stamped on Tristan Sherry while supporting himself on two people beside him. Yes, and as I said, others that are involved in that case are before the courts for different matters. So we will have to work out how to handle that when the sentencing comes up. So there's going to be a lot of interest in that in the sentencing, because, of course, what will happen is before the courts will be put some character references, I imagine, for these young boys. We'll hear a little bit about their background. We might hear a little bit of how they got involved in this sort of drug gang in the first place. And, maybe what they had hoped and dreamed for in the future before their life has been derailed by this. They're very young going into prison on that life sentence.
They're very young. And of course, that may be taken into account in terms of how long they serve. But a life...
That would be by the prison and the Justice Department.
That would be the prison and the Justice Department who will look at their young age, look to see if they could be rehabilitated. But they'll always have a life tariff hanging over them. It doesn't go away. Once they go out of prison, they can be brought back in again if they're found to be misbehaving. Yeah. So it's not as simple as people think, I suppose. You do 14 years and you're out. The restrictions on you are still very possible to be reactivated. I know a case of a woman who was brought back in 11 or 10 years after being released on a life sentence, back in on very minor drugs charges, and was back in prison for 2-3 years with like, you're talking 50 quid's worth of drugs. So it's not straightforward.
Be interesting to hear from some of the parents in this case, wouldn't it?
It would.
Because I'm damn sure that they certainly didn't want this for their kids, and when they're so young, it can be easy to be drawn into those gangs, especially by an older individual who's offering them something that in their young brains they think is, they're only thinking day to day, aren't they?
100%, especially, they're very young, but still a man is dead, I suppose, at the end of it all.
Okay, Niall, thanks.
Thanks, Nicola. Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
A Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.